and welcome back to another edition of the SBK Betting Podcast. And as always, thrilled to have my partners in crime alongside me again, Ross Millar and James Millman back. Last weekend, bit of a mixed bag of results, but we got through it and we got some winners. Ross Millar, cap course at 13-2, another victory in the Sir Peter O'Sullivan Chase. That was a fantastic result. He did it even better than he had done the previous time he won that race. And Numitor was placed at 13-1 also in the last. Pleasingly, my nap, I think she won. Epatante, I'm not entirely sure, but the picture seems to give a couple of question marks around that, but I'll take a win. And a big each way return with Brahma Bull, who finally made it home in third, about 40 lengths behind the first two in a thrilling renewal of the Ladbrokes Trophy. So we got a few results in there last week, but with plenty more winners to find this weekend. And all the action's coming in from Sandown and from Aintree. And we're going to kick off with Sandown. And we're focusing on the biggest and the best chase races over the weekend as well. And Sandown, just one of the best tracks in the country, I suppose, in terms of testing chases to their very limit. And it's going to be an interesting test for the novices. And that's where we're going to start the 150 at Sandown, the Close Brothers Henry VIII Novices Chase. So I'll welcome in James Millman and Ross Millar. James, as I mentioned, Sandown, you know it probably is a track from your flat days riding, but as a track in terms of for the jumpers, it's a brilliant test, and it's brilliant to see those horses giving it their all and trying to be very tactically aware and astute and pretty agile around this track, isn't it?
Yeah, especially down the back straight, the railway fences in particular. You've got to hit them every stride, and a good jumper can excel at Sandown, perhaps more than they do at other tracks elsewhere, and then they get into a rhythm and then they can get away. And interesting enough, it's not going to be too soft, as we said that all season. I think it's the driest November since records began 25 years ago. Andrew Cooper was saying on the old social media this morning. So it's not going to be testing as such, but if they go quick enough, you still need to stay up that hill. And I'm really looking forward to it. Yes, no Shishkin for the main event, but it's still going to be some absolutely fantastic racing on Saturday.
So All Mankind was a pretty spectacular winner. His exuberant jumping style got him round there in the end. Third time lucky for the Skeltons is their big chance at this race. And he's heading the betting at 6-4. Edward Stone is 4-1. Manila Drama 6-1. Warlord 13-2. Iridato coming back a week after his win last Saturday is 8-1. Stolen Silver 13-1. And Do Your Job 17-1. Ross, I'll come to you first. Third time lucky, been pretty flawless, really. Both times we've seen him running. At Cheltenham, though, a bit of a different test going the other way at Sandown. How do you assess his chances and the overall look of this race?
Well, I think he's definitely made up into a better chase than he was hurdler. And yes, he's got to go the other way round here, but his jumping has looked in the main very assured. He's looked quick, he's looked slick. The one thing I would say is I'm always keen to try and find a reason to take on these short price favourites in novice chases at sort of graded level, particularly this time of the season. And I'm just not convinced he had a huge amount left at the end at Cheltenham. We lost Captain Tomcat at the last, and I think if he'd have stood up, I think it would have been interesting. There's a very likely chance that they can get racing a long way out at Sandown, and for that reason alone, the stamina question I have with him, I'd be keen to take him on. I think the horse that I like here against him is the Sam Thomas trained Stolen Silver. He's a second season novice. Things didn't go quite to plan last year when with Nigel Twiston-Davies, but he came back this season at Market Raising on his first start for Sam Thomas, and he jumped like an absolute buck from fence to fence under Charlie Deutsch, won very, very easily. He then went to Sandown and was second to Editor de Gite, trying to give him £5. And I think that's probably a race where if Charlie Deutsch could have that back again, he'd probably fancy his chance of winning. He finished like an express train and only just failed. His jumping down the back here could really take him a long way forward. He's got stamina up to 2 mile 4. So if they do get racing a long way out, I think he's got a plenty of stamina to see him home. And even some of his back form, back when with Nigel Twiston-Davies, his chase debut last year at Bangor, he was beaten about 6 lengths by the now 155 rated Eldorado Allen. So he's about there on ratings, and I think he's been overlooked by the market. Sam Twiston Davis takes over from Charlie Deutsch. That wouldn't be a bad thing in my book. And I just think at the prices, he'd be one that I'd be keen to oppose the favourite with.
13-1, he's a big price in the betting at the moment. He stumbled at the last at Cheltenham, and which a lot of horses were doing over the course of that weekend. When you've got to jump as well as you need to, are you confidence in him? Sam Twiston Davis, as you say, back and board. Does he feel like a horse that was just a novice error, that he'll be able to eradicate that at Sandown, which is a big test of jumping?
I think so. I thought his jumping was pretty assured all the way around. He did make a mistake at the back of the last, but it was his Market Raisin run that really caught my imagination. I watched it back last night. He jumped every fence and took lengths from the field at every fence. And I think if he can get into a good rhythm, which is really important around Sandown, I think his jumping is as good as anything in the field.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting contender in what is fascinating, really. I'm with Ross in that. I think Third Time Lucky is opposable. James, where have you fallen down on this? It's an interesting race, especially with Il Rodato coming in. I think that's very punchy of Paul Nicholls to throw the dice again just so quickly after last week. Yeah,
he's only back a week after an impressive win, but I like a form line with Il Rodato because Warlord actually beat him on £5 better terms at Newton Abbott when it was a 4-runner contest back in October. Warlord won quite nicely. Witness Protection was second. Il Rodato was only back in third, beaten 10 lengths. And yes, he was impressive at Newbury the other day against experienced handicappers. But strictly at the weights, Warlord is a progressive type. I thought he won well at Carlisle. He just idled when he hit the front, beat him in a drama. He takes him on again by a short head. He's probably value, I'd say, for 3 or 4 lengths on the back of that success. Team Tizzard, chasing is all they're about. The hurdling is very much a means to an end, and he had a good campaign last year. Relative to what Team Tizzard were doing, is third at Haydock, who he's quite well behind Albert's back. I liked the way he's progressed. I think Third Time Lucky, he could be vulnerable. Like he's 6-4 favourite. It'd be no surprise if he made it 3 from 3 since going chasing. But he walked up the hill. Whether he kicked on too soon, that is a question mark last time at Cheltenham. And the Captain Tomcat, if he had stood on his feet, I think he would have run on quite well. And I wouldn't really fancy Captain Tomcat in this contest. So I think he's a little bit vulnerable at the prices. I quite like Ross's shout for Stolen Silver because he is a second season chaser. He's got experience against the experienced handicappers in Cheltenham last time. So I certainly wouldn't rule him out of the price, but I just thought Warlord was the angle I was looking. Just a shame as 7 runners, which is a little bit frustrating because it had a nice each way shape with 8. But even so, I do think Warlord's going to give Third Time Lucky a real race. And like I say, Brennan Power will be holding on to him as long as possible. He might just pounce up that stiff hill.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It is a stiff hill. There's such a big, long run in. Brendan Powell's done so well, joined up with Colin Tizzard this season. Warlord at 13-2 at the moment. I'm going to take you on though, James, because I know there's that form line with Il Rodato, but I think interesting horse this. He is a 4-year-old, so he does get a good weight advantage off his elders. And I just like the Nicholls team thinking to bring him out of what was, a much weaker race in terms of the race that he won last week, but the manner he did it, the way he jumped as well, it just confirmed the good form he'd shown over in France. And also he did have excuses behind Warlord. I think he twisted a shoe at Newton Abbott. So he's obviously fresh. He's well. They're keeping on going. And I think he's a fascinating contender for the Nicholls team at 8-1. So we all got different opinions of the Henry VIII chase. And it's a cracking way to begin the day, really. It's always it builds up to the Tingle Creek at 2:25, just shy of 2 miles, and it's brilliant, really brilliant that Willie Mullins sends over Chachin Poursois. Unusual route through. He normally starts a bit later in the season as well, but they've got him ready for this test. He's 5-4, Nube Negra is 5-2, Grenadine 5-1, Hitman 11-1, and Captain Guinness makes up the field at 12-1. A small field. Shame, but these races, this is going to be a tactically run affair, I feel, perhaps, Ross. I'm going to be really interested to see what the Skeletons decide to do with Nube Negra. They reopposed him and Chacun Pour Soi after meeting at Cheltenham. But for me, this looks like a great opportunity for Chacun Pour Soi on a track that I think will suit him. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it does look like a match, doesn't it? I spent a good bit of time trying to take on the top two and come up with a sort of feasible argument why either of them might not win. And truthfully, there's very few holes in both of them, really. I mean, it is the first time Patrick Mullins be riding Chacun Pour Soi in public. I'm sure he sat on him plenty at home and schooled him at home. So you'd have to say that's a very small hole in him. And maybe he has looked vulnerable at times on his reappearance, but I would think that if they're going to spend the time and the money to send him over the water for this, they're not going to have left him undercooked. And then with Nube Negra, I think if he's going to beat Chacun Pour Soi, this is probably his best chance. But I was slightly baffled by the fact that all last year, the Skeletons were adamant that he was best fresh. They were going to leave him fresh and they were going to go to Cheltenham. Now, I know he's a year older and horses change as they get stronger, but this is a fairly quick turnaround from when he won the Schlur at Cheltenham. And that, for me, I thought was a fairly large negative. He's got 24 lengths to find from Punchestown. I know he finished in front of him at Cheltenham, but I just think that was too bad to be true from Chacun Pour Soi. Maybe the track doesn't suit him, but at Punchestown, he firmly put Nube Negra in his place, and I see no reason really why he won't do that again. If it gets tactical and it turns into a sprint, that's going to suit Nube Negra. But I can't think that Bryony Frost on Granatine, Harry Cobden on Hitman, or Patrick on Chacun Pour Soi are going to want that to happen. So I think the three of them will, between them, force the pace. And I think they're pretty confident now with Chacun Pour Soi that if they need to go on early, they will. And I could see him taking out maybe at the pond fence, making a strong bid for home. And I think he is a strong stayer at 2 miles. I don't get this and don't buy into this. He doesn't stay at Cheltenham. I just think it's perhaps not his track, or they perhaps didn't ride into his best advantage at Cheltenham. But yeah, I tried really hard to take on a favourite, and I just think he's very hard to oppose in this.
Yeah, it is difficult to find flaws in him. He's also a smashing jumper, a really, really good jumper of a fence. He's obviously had his issues, James, but when he's good, he's very, very, very good. And Nube Negra is going to have to be at his very best, which he looks like he was last time out at Cheltenham. In perhaps was quite a good opportunity in the end. Put the Castle on, didn't really show up, and it was just fairly comfortable. But what has he really done to prove that he can beat Chacun Pour Soi in a race like this?
Yeah, well, Chacun Pour Soi, people are saying he perhaps isn't going to be as good at Cheltenham as what he is over in Ireland. I might just give him a bit of whether he travels over as well, because obviously he came over for Cheltenham originally the year before and didn't run, picked up a setback and didn't run at the festival 2 years ago. And then last year, obviously, he got beat. So he's traveling over again for the first time, obviously away from Cheltenham. But I just thought that might be a little bit of a doubt. First run for 221 days. Nube Negra, Ross, he's mentioned what Skelton said, he'd like him best fresh. But last year, I think he had a few setbacks. Obviously, he missed the festival in 2020, and he came back late for Desert Orchid when he beat Altior at 20-1. And I think it was a bit of a rush prep to get him back for that. He then ran an absolute cracker when second the champion, and ultimately that rush preparation might just have cost him when he went to Punchestown, because he's not going to get anywhere near Chacun Pour Soi on that form. But just, 5 weeks before that, he did beat him at Cheltenham ultimately. So you've got two different form lines. We've seen Nube Negra this season already. For me, it's going to be an absolute crack and watch. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the race pans out. I say we're missing Shishkin, but we've got two absolutely exceptional 2 mile chasers heading the market. And Nube Negra might just always just go under the radar a little bit. He's already dethroned Altior, back in that Desert Orchid when 20-1, he really wasn't expected to. His closing sectionals were pretty strong. If the race does play to his strengths, I just see him beating Chacun Pour Soi under these circumstances. And the other three, realistically, I don't think they're going to be good enough. So ultimately, between the two, and just for me, I'm edging towards Nube Negra. It's not strong. I'm not massively confident, but that's where I'll be heading in that race.
Yeah, look, it's for me, feels like a 2-horse race. But as Ross was saying, tactically, it's very interesting. They've sort of been patient with New Negro in the past in terms of how they ride him and holding him up. So whether Pat Patrick goes on and makes the most of Chash and Poursoir will be interesting. But yeah, it'll be interesting. At least Nube Negra definitely has his ground, and so there's just no excuse for either of them. I'm with Ross. I think Chash and Poursoir is the real talented standout. It is interesting about his traveling. He's only ever left Ireland once before, which didn't go that well, but they've clearly had this in the pipeline for some time. And look, he's hard to oppose at 5-4. So we'll head on up to Aintree. That's where we're going to go next. Always a cracking card, this, and the Many Clouds is where we'll start at 2:05 over 3 mile 1 furlong. And that's what I really want to focus on, the 3 mile 1 furlong, because there aren't that many genuine stayers in this race. There'll be plenty of horses that will really need to prove themselves at this track and over this trip. And Protectorat is one of them, and he heads the market at 6-4. Native River isn't one of them. We know that he can stay. He's now at the grand age of 11, rising 12. He's 9-4. Imperial Aura 11-2. Simply the Bet 6-1. The dual Grand National winner Tiger Roll is back. Is a fascinating contender at 17-1, which is always a big price. Sam Brown 26-1. The Two Amigos 51-1, and Wishing and Hoping also 51-1. And look, this was a funny race last year. I remember I rewatched it again, and I just remembering the fact that they had to omit all those fences in the straight due to the sunlight. So I think Aintree will be desperately hoping that it's pretty miserable on Saturday so that we can get it a proper test, because they crawled along. And that's what Protectorat will want, and Native River, who's a real stayer. And it's interesting. It doesn't really, it sort of lacks the real spark that you want of this race, but it is a fascinating race anyway, isn't it, Ross?
It is. I mean, last year it was one of the best bumpers run all year. So yeah, let's hope we get a bit of drizzle or a bit of cloud, so we get a full quota of fences. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think 6-4 about Protectorat, just to me, is just far too short. He's got to prove he stays. He's got Bridget Andrews on board, who is a very fine jockey, and I wouldn't be slighting her at all. But this is a big ask for her, stepping into a big ride on a Saturday in a graded race. And I just think at the prices, he is far too short. As you said, what do you take him on with? Native River is the confirmed stayer. John Joe Neal on board, I think he'll suit him. But I just wonder whether the ground is going to be quite soft enough for him. And the horse I like, and I think he is possibly overpriced, is Simply the Bets. Having a second run now for Paul Nicholls, second run up back after wind surgery. And I thought his first run at Cheltenham was full of promise. He carried the same weight as Protectorat in that 2 mile 4 handicap chase, and he was beaten 4 lengths. But he now gets a pull of £3 at the weights. He previously beat Imperial Aura over 2.5 miles at Cheltenham, gave him, I think it was £4, and now gets a £6 pull at the weights. And when he won at Cheltenham on that occasion, he was the one that was going strongest to the line. So he has got to prove he stays. But I think of the ones at the head of the market that need to prove they stay, he's the one that interests me the most, given that he gets weight from pretty much all around him. Native River will certainly set out to make it a strong test. So anything that wins this is going to have to stay. And for me, it came down to the old boy, Native River. Do you side with him, or do you look for an improver? And I just thought this Simply the Bets has perhaps gone a little bit under the radar. I think he's a horse of immense potential. He's a sound jumper, strong stayer at the trip he's run at so far. Paul Nicholls did say before Cheltenham that he thought he would improve for the run, and he thought he had him earmarked as one that he thought might want further. There's not much he gets wrong, and I think at the prices, getting weight from all those around him, he'd be my play at 6-1.
Gavin Sheehan gets back on board, trusted partner for so long when he was with Harry Whittington. It's that he'll be pleased to be back on board. I feel that James might might have a thing to say about Bridget Andrews, who's been a good ally to you in the past with some excellent rides. Thoughts on Ross's opinion on her taking this big ride on Protectorat?
Well, it is a fact that she doesn't have as many grade 1 opportunities or grade 2 opportunities as what Harry or a lot of the other jockeys that ride in these kind of races do. But like I say, for me, she got us off the mark with the pod with Amula Gold. She gets horses jumping, and that can be a key asset. What you see in that final furlong, that doesn't normally actually make that much difference to the race. It's that rhythm they get horses into down the back, and I do think Bridget's very good at that. The point about the stamina is key, because obviously he tried it once, he was beat before distance became an issue at Kelso. He's got loads of solid form at 2.5. Native River, we know is going to go hard from the front, but I still think Protector is going to be in his cruising zone, even when Native River is absolutely flat out, because the ground's not going to be too soft, you wouldn't think, at Aintree, bearing in mind the weather we've had recently. And he looked so good. If he hadn't made that bad mistake, I think he really would have given Midnight Shadow a race. I felt Susan's horse was tying up in front, which is why he got so close at the line. But I just felt if he hadn't made that mistake, he would have been that much closer throughout the contest. So for me, it was tight there in the Paddy Power back in November. Yes, he's got a £3 turnaround, but he was 5 lengths ahead of Simply the Bets last time. And I feel it'd be the same case. I think Ross has probably got better value as such, but I think Protector has got a lovely opportunity here. And the Skeletons do think he might make that next step up into being an open horse. And if he's going to do that, he's got to win this race on Saturday. So I think he's got a strong chance in what's a tricky Saturday to pinpoint a star. I thought he was the best bet of the weekend for me.
Yeah, interesting horses in this race. A lot of them have a few question marks and slight areas that you can pick at. Imperial Aura for me is one of them. He was, now you can say, and my camp will say that he was traveling well in the Betfair Chase before falling. Lots of people might say that you wouldn't have known at all whether he was traveling well or not. It was very early to tell, but I do think that the Kim Bailey team were very punchy about him before that. They'll have to get him to jump better at Aintree. But I believe he was going well in that race, and that was a genuinely good running at a genuine good pace in a grade 1 of that nature. And I don't think this is a particularly strong renewal. And I think, again, the Protectorat is definitely beatable at 6-4. So like Ross, trying to find some value out of there. And I think 11-2 could be that value. Talking the national fences, that's where we're going to crack on next to our final race that we're going to look at today, which is the Becher Handicap Chase over the 3 miles and 2 furlongs. And McTotty, who has now proven himself over these fences, he's got a step up in trip. He is currently joint favourite 7-1 with Snow Leopardess. Mighty Thunder's 8-1. Kimberlite Candy, who was second in this race last year, 9-1. Chris's Dream, 11-1. Check it out, 12-1. Hogan's Height, 13-1. The Leon Rouge, it's 15-1 with Latroy at 15-1, and it's 17-1 bigger the rest in this race where Ross, let's start with you, Leon Rouge. He's bidding for a 3rd Becher Chase. This is his 6th time running in the race. And what's amazing, and what the Pipe team are probably delighted about, is that his mark never seems to change. He's running off 10-9 again. And they obviously earmarked this race, and this is where he thrives, and give it a go. Why not?
I can't believe he's 15-1. Father Time might be catching up with him, who knows, but 15-1 to me seemed a big price. He won this last year. I mean, he won it in a canter, very emphatically. I think he's £4 or £5 higher this time, only carries £2 more the way the weights are framed this year. And this is his race. This is his track. Like we said about Tiger Roll, anything this horse does on a park course, he'll improve a huge amount for going over these fences. His win last year came off the back of a very lackluster run around the park fences at Aintree in a veterans chase. This year, again, he reappeared in the veterans chase at Chepstow, but he ran with a much more enthusiasm. I think last year he was beaten in the region of 20 plus lengths. This year, beaten 10 lengths, and actually shaped well for a very long way. He does have Tom Scudamore on, which Tom Scudamore was a fantastic jockey, but you could just question maybe his best form has come with Conor O'Farrell on board. But I think that's, unlikely. I just thought 15-1, he's going to have soft enough ground. He's proven over the fences. He did fall in the national, but by all accounts, he's scored well over the imitation fences at Pond House since. I struggle to see why he was as big as he was. And I'd be very surprised if he didn't hit the frame. And I think it'll take a good one to beat him, to be honest.
Very confident, Sal. 15-1. I mean, it is. And he always seems to be, as I said, this is his Gold Cup, essentially. And last year, when he won this race, he was 12-1. And, he just loves it. But I kind of remember looking back on that race, I feel like things sort of fell apart. Some of the key protagonists didn't really show up, and he just won by a country mile, James. Do you think that this will be as straightforward for him this year? I just feel like it was nearly too good to be true how well he won the race, considering he couldn't really back that up at all in the 3 runs he had after that.
Yeah, he comes alive for this race. He doesn't really quite see out the 4 mile 2 furlongs for the full Grand National distance, and he's not as good under regulation fences or over regulation fences anymore. My slight issue is he was your banker to get round, and then he did fall in the Grand National last time around. He's 12-year-old now. I think Ross has made an excellent point. He's good value because, like I say, this is his race. He would have been prepped for it, but he is getting a year older. And I thought the handicapper, yes, he won easily, but he was harsh enough to put him up. Initially £8 when he ran in the Grand National. He's dropped 3. He's still £5 higher than last year and a year older. I have no strong convictions. This is an open race. Mac Totti obviously won the Grand Sefton. He can now do both. He's £7 higher in a stronger race. Snow Leopardess, love her attitude. She went up 5 for that Bangor win. Might that be enough to stop her? So I'm putting a couple at big prices. The main one is Cabolo. Now this one, John Joe Neal's horse, he goes best fresh. He's had a wind up since we last saw him. He's only got 10 stone. Perhaps at around about 34-1 with SBK, this might just be the time to catch him. If he takes these fences, he's jumped Ascot well. He was second there last season. He won at Exeter over a 3 mile on heavy ground, so he stays well. I just thought he was overpriced. And the other one I quite liked was a Twiston Davis runner. Check it out. Quite a lightly raced individual compared to plenty of the opposition. I liked his return at Ascot when he finished second to Larry. That was a strong handicap. He's gone up £4 effectively as Marquis runs off. With Jordan there taking off another 3. And just thought he was one that might also be in the 4. It's a very, very open contest. Looking forward again to seeing horses over the big fences. More competitive than what the Grand Sefton was. But a horse like Cabolo, 34-1, I don't think you can go wrong each way with him.
Yeah, Cabolo, Robbie Don on board for this horse is pulled up at Cheltenham. I just don't think he ran any race at all, but looks off his weight, 10 stone. Is nothing really, and that's what you need when you're giving these big fences a go for the first time. Similarly from me, Achille is a horse that I followed off a cliff last year and was just unlucky to be second 3 times at good prices. And Charlie Deutsch gets the best out of him. He likes to hold him up, bring and delivers him late. The ground might not be quite soft enough for him. I'd like to see it rain a little bit more. I think at 21-1, he's another horse. Plenty of horses in here with value. I think it looks like, Totti has to prove himself over this trip. Probably we can take him on, as we all are. And definitely this is the best betting race of the weekend. So a cracking Becher Chase, some great racing throughout the weekend, guys. And as always ask you for your nap and your each way selection. We had luck with these last week, so I'll come to Ross, to you first.
So the nap is not the most original, but I think Chac and Poursoir take a lot of beating at Sandown. And then my next best comes in the 3:15 from Aintree, and it's Cateson. He's back on the same mark of 134 as when winning this last year. He's moved from Tom Lacey to Alistair Ralph. Had a nice quiet comeback run last month for Alistair Ralph. And I think he runs this track very well. His 5th at the Aintree Festival last year off a mark of 138 was strong form in a stronger race. And I think off 134, and I think at 11-1, I think he's a nice each way price.
Yeah, 11-1, that's right. For Cateson, for Ross and Chac and Poursoir as well. James, come to you next from your selections.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you both. I think Bridget Andrews will find the key to protect her rats. That's my nap. A tricky weekend. It's a spectacle of races this weekend. I'm really looking forward to watching the action. Punting wise, it might be a little bit tricky. So Bridget's going to come to my rescue, and Protect Her Rat's going to jump well and land the many clouds. That's the nap of the day. And Cabola Lobo, he's the each way angle in the Becher. I think he's too big at 34 to 1. Like I think he's going to go well fresh. He's had a wind up, tongue tied, cheek pieces. It might just be the time to catch John Joanne's runner in what's, again, absolutely cracking competitive handicap chase over the big fences.
Protect Her as we speak is 6-4 for the many clouds for James, and very confidence in this horse that we're both Ross and I are taking on. And my nap, I'm going to agree with Ross. Chachin Pour Soir, I think he's the class horse of the weekend. So I'm happy to have a safe nap with him. And then Achille, a horse that I've just, as I mentioned before, have really enjoyed watch him and Charlie Deutsch, their partnership, how he rides him. I can't wait to see them back at it again at Aintree on Saturday. And he's my each way selection at 21 to 1. Okay, guys. Well, thank you for taking us through your insight for these 4 races. We've got a lot to look forward to at Aintree and at Sandown. As always, give us a like, a follow, a retweet, subscribe to the podcast. We'll be back again next week, hopefully delivering some more winning selections for you all. So thank you to James and to Ross for joining me, and we'll see you next week.